All right, my dudes. We ready to get into this? Let's get into this. Welcome. Happy Friday for folks around the world. Try to do it early enough to where the European folks is like in their evening on Friday evening. Hopefully, right before they go out to happy hour. We're going to get into this. So this quick video is going to be on misconceptions. So I'm going to have a whole bunch of stuff coming out over the next 2 weeks related to the merge, what's happening with GPU mining, what are we doing, what am I looking at, what is what's concerns, how are things looking when it comes to some of the ancillary applications and how they're looking when it comes to swapping, bridging, liquidity pools, all the things that are going to be very closely looked at that could be affected or have some kind of ill effect if there's issues at the merge time. There's people all over that are concerned. And I mean, there's also a lot of people that are excited, that have been looking forward to the merge for a long time. I'm obviously not totally one of those people, but if I had more confidence in some of the testing, I think I would be, supporting it a little more, but we'll see. I think it's going to be an interesting next few weeks, and hopefully they're not YOLOing this network into, disaster. But that's not what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about misconceptions, things that are expected or people have, talked about that are not really true of what's happening with this merge and our fees going to go away and all that kind of stuff. So this isn't just something that BBT Carter's coming up with. This is actually out on Ethereum's, let's on this side, org upgrades the merge, and then they have a section here called misconceptions. So we're going to cover a couple of these, and then I'll get into some of the stuff that I'm looking at related to this merge, and some just the open questions. I don't think I've had a lot of coverage with regards to people that have validators and are how they're going to get the fees and stuff on the ETH1 side. I mean, there's still a lot of not a lot of understanding out there. There's words on paper that show kind of how it's going to work, but I want to get through an architecture drawing with people on another video with that of okay, you have an ETH node, maybe you're hosting it yourself. How are you going to get paid the fees? Because those are still going to be on the ETH1 network and paid to you. So I want to have a conversation about that, kind of how that works, what it's going to look mechanically. Because there are people also that have, maybe fractional ownership. How's that going to work if you only have a Rocket Pool account and you're still going to earn, and let's say your particular node that you're part of has fees that are awarded because it becomes a block producer and now it earns that ETH rewards fees. How does that distribution get to you and that kind of thing? So maybe we'll have Rocket Pool's people on for that, but Mike, one of those, that's what I'm looking forward to with relation to that. But let's get into the misconceptions right here. We're going to go top to bottom on this, and I'll kind of explain some of the various aspects of them as I'm going through them. So one of the very first misconceptions is people are saying that you need to have 32 ETH to run a node, and that is false. There's two types of nodes. There are nodes that on this proof of stake world, there are nodes that produce blocks and are validators for that. And that is what you would need essentially that 32 ETH consignment for, which is your stake to give you the opportunity to mint a block. So, and then there's just information nodes, right? Historical nodes of the chain. Those are separate. You never need to pay for any of the, you're paying for the node itself, but you're not getting paid for hosting that kind of node. So that's something separate. Then you have a situation where a lot of people are asking the question on, the merge is going to reduce gas fees. That's the second one here. And each one of these, I got the link below in this description for you guys can tell what's going on. And there in each of these sections, you can hit more, and it explains it with a little more detail and fidelity. But if you have folks going out there and telling you different aspects of what the merge is going to bring, and you're seeing some kind of Pumentals person out there on Twitter telling you, oh, it's going to reduce fees, screw the miners and stuff. It's no, dude, like point them to the source, right? Point them to the merge source here, and you can hit this like more button over here, which expands that to like a lot more detail for you guys to be able to explain things. I'm not going to read all that to you guys, but we're going to kind of go through these. I'm going to explain, the various components of them. So the next one, the merge is going to release our reduced gas fees, and you guys can kind of see that one here, right? This one right here. That too is false. The gas market and the way it works with you're trying to get transactions into the next block, so you pay more than somebody else. And while the wallets attempt to give you a baseline of a gas fee of what the average rolling gas fee is, you could go out there and prioritize it as higher. And you could say, I absolutely need this transaction to go through in the next block, and you'll pay higher than anybody else. So that's order sorted based on the highest provider. And maybe you're doing a complex operation and you're going to pay X amount for this thing because you definitely want to take an arbitrage opportunity or something like that. You're going to pay a higher fee. And that's how you kind of start to get that MEV activity, where people see that activity in the mempool and then reorder and sort that to optimize it for more potential, revenue for them, by also paying higher gas fees to make sure that they're the first one getting through the box. None of that stuff changes with this proof of stake release. So gas fees are not coming down. It's just what it is. So, and then there's a detailed description in there of why gas fees. So gas fees are not changing. Transactions being noticeably faster. It's not changing like that. Also, no, transactions are not going to be faster. There are some changes in the way things work. Some of the things that are working, which may give the allure that it has a few functions a little faster, but most all transactions are going to be the same exact speed on ETH. Here, we'll scroll this up some so you guys can see there. So the next one we're on real quick is you can withdraw your staked ETH after the merge. That's also false. You will not be able to do that until their next release after the merge, per what Tim Binko and team has said. This is the one I've always had kind of a big issue with because I don't think anybody's done the due diligence, or at least I haven't seen it, on the tax implications of what happens with all this locked ETH. It's kind of a new gray it's like in a gray territory, a new territory, at least for the U.S. citizens. So I'm still very interested on how that's all going to play out, because while you have received emissions, and if you're on like Lido and you get ST ETH, which is equivalent token to your staked ETH there, that gives you a little bit of liquidity access. Are they treated different than people that have staked ETH and have not had any access to liquidity? I think there's some question with, do you have tax liabilities with the ST ETH being a representative example of that? There's just a lot of questions with it. And I think the incentives are not in the favor of them making it a speedy withdrawal to open up those withdrawals, because you essentially are unlocking 2+ million ETH overnight that now can hit the market. Not that people would start to take that down in any way, but incentives will work a little differently. And it's the same thing coming into like Bitcoin and the Mt. Gox coins that are getting released, the 170,000 plus coins that start also on release day of this. So start day of those BTC coins being available from Mt. Gox to the creditor folks is also on September 15th. It's not going to be all of them at the same time, but it's still that same kind of effect. If we see people that have staked their coins and they've had them for a year and a half, almost 2 years going into December, and are they going to unstake the moment they can and then liquidate that position? The people that first put their staked ETH in, put it in there at anywhere from $650 to $899 was the big bulk, that push initially there in December of 19 into 20. A lot of people were picking up their ETH and moving it into, it's 20. Yeah, it was into 21, 20 into 21. You had the push into the smart contract that would hold the ETH for the staked ETH on Beacon. And essentially they haven't been able to withdraw it unless they had taken an ST ETH position, if they were doing it with like Lido. When you look at any of these type of efforts, if it's a mission schedule, if it's the tokenomics, the pump mentals, whatever you want to call it, it all comes down to a couple basic principles of supply and demand. And the moment you have an influx, it's just like the seed release stuff. Like if you're in early and like a pre-mine kind of thing, and they make people lock up their tokens, you get into a situation that when those unlocks happen, you usually have a pretty hard sell-off ahead of that unlock because people are concerned. This is the kind of stuff that I think ETH has indirectly set themselves up for, that there's going to be this like immovable object, unstoppable force kind of event with regards to the unlocking of all that ETH. Because you're, again, 2+ million ETH that now is unlocked. Is there the financial incentive for them to speed roll that? Or are they just going to continue in this derivative setup to where there is a 1-to-1, it's not a derivative. Let me fix that. If we're talking a staked ETH representative token that's supposed to be 1-to-1, it's already not trading at the same ETH level, right? It's 3 or 4% lower than the current ETH value, which you can look at those ST ETH as like a staked, like a futures price almost. Like if you buy ST ETH right now and it's lower than ETH price, you can redeem it at the time of this thing getting unlocked for that ETH current price, right? So if you're buying the ST ETH cheaper, you would be probably a proponent that would be selling when that's unlocked, right? Because you bought something cheaper and now it's pumped up, and let's say it pumps up before the thing. You're finding an arbitrage opportunity indirectly. That's kind of like like an anchored arbitrage opportunity, right? So there was an unpairing of that pretty far. I think it was as far as 13% at one point, where ST ETH was cheaper by almost 13% than current ETH. Again, all of this coming back to the whole, can you withdraw at the time of the merge? No, but at that some future date, you will be able to. That dynamic is very interesting to me because it's going to create an interesting Twitter conversation, let's just say. Let's go to the next misconception. Validators will not receive any liquid ETH rewards after Shanghai upgrade when withdrawals are enabled. So that's the merge, is what they're talking about there. And what that is saying is there was a misconception that right now the block rewards go to miners that are mining ETH, right? We get the emission of the 2.0, two coins per block every 13 and a half to 15 seconds, plus all of the MEV / tip rewards, the stuff that's not burned, right? That's going to miners right now. Well, that will go to validators after the merge. And this is a very interesting dynamic and setup that I would like to peel back further in another video. Is you have an ETH node staked, let's say on the ETH 2.0, you're earning the emissions right now on that staked ETH node, on wherever that's being provided to. It's going to your ETH node, and you can't touch those rewards until things are unlocked. However, if your node is selected to be a block producer and is awarded that because staked ETH POS is a deterministic system where mining, if you're mining you're in the mining, it's probable. It's based on hash rate. You have a chance. It's not a guarantee. You could mine forever solo and never win a block, right? But you have a probability that you will win one based on your hash rate versus the network over a certain period of time. Like there's just a random chance. It's random. Proof of stake is deterministic. So meaning every epoch, all of the nodes are predetermined on who's going to be that block. And now that part ahead of it is random, where you don't know the selection, but it's like a lottery. But it's already pre-selected. So let's say you're the proud winner of minting a block reward or minting the block and doing the consensus part of that. If you are and you are selected, you will receive that particular block's mining tips and rewards to your ETH1 address. And that's the part that I want to kind of make sure people have a more acute awareness of how mechanically that works. Like it can be an address connected to MetaMask and you're just issued out an emission reward or a fee reward, and how they're going to do that kind of separation, because the emission is setting on Beacon, the rewards are setting on ETH1, and that whole thing is confusing by nature and concerning because they're kind of two different networks to me. It's just how they had to implement it. So it's not right, wrong, or indifferent, but it's just an implementation strategy. But it makes things very interesting on, like, again, the taxation and stuff like that. That's the stuff that I kind of look at. Like from a miner, you are earning the earned rewards, and the emission is considered income, at least in the United States, right? So I could argue that I haven't received my reward until I have access to get it on the stake side, but now I'm getting this other thing that I am going to have to report, right? So there's some implications that you have to look into, and obviously I'm not a tax attorney, but talk to a tax attorney of how you're going to handle that if you're a staker, because it's gonna be an interesting kind of setup. But again, those are going to be made available, and immediately the fees on an ETH1 side. Again, this is why we need a better picture and understanding of what that looks like, and that's a separate video. But make sure you're subscribing and stuff if you want to see that, because we're going to go through and peel that back of how that works. So the next one after that, it's this third one here. I'm going to scroll this up. So when withdrawals are enabled, stakers will exit all at once. So this is what I was just talking about. False. They think this is false. Now, this one, I don't know. I mean, so I wouldn't even put this under a misconception, because they don't know. I mean, if ETH unfortunately falls down like a Solana thing to where they have like desyncing and reorging, and it makes the ecosystem unstable, nobody knows if they unlock the 32 ETH, once withdrawals are enabled, how many are going to exit? Nobody has any idea on that. So I mean, the cool story, but nobody knows if everybody's going to pull everything out. I mean, I highly doubt it. It's just like, is mining going to turn off? All miners are dead after ETH goes away? No, miners are going to move on to other stuff. Some people are going to clean their rigs. Some people are going to sell their stuff because it makes no sense because of their power cost or whatever. But those same miners may turn back on if another network starts to get enough inertia behind it, development and usage, to where there's such a demand that there is a large price increase, then miners will turn back on, right? So on those particular networks, I don't think anybody knows what's going to actually happen once withdrawals are enabled. I would think that there's going to be a group of folks that have been waiting. Maybe their life situations change and they need that 32 ETH and they may exit, their nodes. But I think it comes down to the healthiness of the network at the end of the day. If ETH is moving past a lot of issues or anything they have in the merge, it may grow the amount of nodes that are out there in participants. But there's a lot around that that I don't think you can necessarily say that it's a misconception. It's just nobody knows that yet. The next one, validators will not receive any liquid ETH. Understand how we already talked about that one. Let's see here. Staking rewards higher. The staking APR is expected to triple after the merge. That's this one here. That one's a little more detailed. What people were doing is they were taking the entire range over the last couple years, and they were looking at the average block reward on the proof of work side, which, if you were looking statistically at that, you had a period of time between March of 2021 through it was actually February, essentially since DeFi really took off, to June, July after EIP 1559. you had this period of time where you had this massive spike of fees, right? This is where the great migration of new miners came online, because there was enough liquidity in the system to provide opportunity for people to participate. And that's where you guys will hear that from me a lot, of mining and the grassroots piece of why mining has always been so important, especially GPU mining, is it's the gateway into cryptocurrency for a lot of people initially. People look at cryptocurrency, and if they're not a developer or they have good financial services, they just kind of look past it and like, I don't understand the point. Like, I have Cash App, I have all this other stuff. Why do I need crypto? But you have an entire group of, individuals that are looking for multiple streams of income. They're technical probably in nature, or want to be more technical in nature. And they find the fact that you can permissionlessly participate in an ecosystem without having a huge understanding of how things operate and function, but offer the opportunity to find a video like one of the ones we make, or any of the other creators, and can take a few pieces of code and script and then be able to be participating in an ecosystem, earning rewards because they become a miner. And then that gets them into understanding the environments more, understanding how pools work, understanding on how features in a blockchain work. Maybe they're a developer and start to look at some code and deploy a smart contract. It's an engagement, grassroots, even playing field across the entire planet that anybody can mine a cryptocurrency from a proof of work standpoint when it comes to a GPU driven kind of coin, because they can quickly participate and earn rewards. So the reason why I'm telling you that is that the engagement is very organic. It can happen very quickly. They don't have to know a lot about it. When we start talking about the merge and you're talking being a proof of stake participant, I want to have the token, so that you have to get it somewhere, which probably means that you're going to have to go to a KYC'd environment if privacy is very important to you, register, pay a fee to buy crypto from somebody, then transfer that to somebody else, because there's probably a high chance that you're not going to host your own node given the requirements when you look at hosting a node. And the technical requirements and the risk of being slashed and all that kind of stuff. You look at it and you're like, Amazon has a service, I'm going to use that. And that's what we've seen actually propagate out there from an adoption and onboarding, as a lot of things becoming a little more federated and centralized on the proof of stake side. So then things are up and running. Part of this incentive that people have been trying to tout is this statement right here. This is why I think this comes in as a misconception, is people are saying, hey, the APR, once the merge happens, it's going to be totally worth it. It's going to go up 3 times of what your emission is. And what this is telling you also is that that's not the case. So again, it's been this whole sales pitch that proof of stake is going to provide you more rewards, because people can see the reward structures that miners have been able to build enterprises around, or build your own home setup around. It becomes, a supplemental income source. And we are providing a service. Like, everybody, and I will always tell everybody this: if you're a miner out there, never be apologetic for earning money, ever. That's kind of what the whole point is. And that money can come in the form of holding the ETH and using the ETH as a utility, and you never convert it to US dollars. It could be, transitioning it to another currency that you're using. And the same thing with stakers are going to be the same thing. But this whole pitch that, the sell is that, hey, this is going to help stakers earn more money. It will increase because they are block producers, but the stakers do not have the same kind of infrastructure yet, like we do on the mining side with the pools. There's Rocket Pool and some sharing of block rewards, but by and large, until that pool structure is kind of set up, and why the pool structures matters is because of those block rewards, right? So you get the emission plus the block rewards. This statement is coming from the fact that the additional fees that are going to be earned by the usage of Ethereum now is going to go to those block producers. And some of this on some, like if we have a large NFT day on Ethereum, you know, some of those block rewards, even with EIP 1559, those could be 6 to 10 to 20 to 100 Ethereum in one block. And one validator will get that, right? So unlike a current miner, it would be equivalent to a solo miner earning that reward. So yes, if you're a staker, and you are hosting your own node and you are selected to be chosen to be a block producer, then yes, you will get that one block that's assigned to you and earn, who knows if it's a block that has you know, a ton of just fees in it, you're going to earn those fees. So they're saying it's around 50% because I think they're trying to undersell it a little, of saying that if you take out all of that initial DeFi activity and all those high fee blocks pre 1559, if you were to take in that block reward and you were to average out what the increase on the proof of stake side will be, it would look like 200, 300% more income. Because it's just, you do that math, but that's predicated on like, if you had a whole bunch of validators pooling their fee reward, right? So the fact that 10, you know, people inside this, this pool of validators win a block on this next epoch, they will share that distribution across all the other validators in the hopes that another validator that's not theirs is going to win a reward and share it with them too. I could get into a whole entire other video on how there's some risk with that, that we could look into with like a pool hopping and that kind of thing, where like a validator wins a couple block, you know, they win a couple, they select it, they win, and then they'll switch their pool to another pool to hope that they'll earn more rewards. There's a lot of pool hopping that could go on with that. And we could peel that back in a different video, but yeah, there's a lot of the gaming that can occur around that. Merge will result in downtime of the chain. I love that this is the last one here. So this is a bold move, Cotton. Saying that that's false. We're going to see. I would be elated. People think that that a lot of us miners are sitting on the sidelines like it's going to fail and it's going to crash and burn. And as an owner of ETH, as a miner of ETH since 2015, as an educator of ETH mining since 2015, also on this channel with, I mean, hundreds of videos on teaching people how to be part of this ecosystem. No, I don't want it to fail. Are you crazy? That's terrible. The confidence here that they're not going to have any downtime is like the test nets had issues, right? They had reorgs. They had the block acceptance and finalization took like 30 minutes, right? This is a 15-second block time. So I would say, what's your definition of downtime? If my definition would be, if the rules of the chain say that a block is coming out every 15 seconds, I'm going to say you're probably going to miss that one upon the merge because of how long it takes to finalize. I would like to see a little more detail on what's going to happen with that and what people would expect. We're obviously going to monitor it. We'll probably be live streaming during this time. There's going to be an interesting behavior change, I think, on exchanges and folks. I mean, obviously, a lot of the exchanges are just quote unquote creating a maintenance schedule around this to where they are providing downtime, at least to a centralized user. When you talk a decentralized standpoint of just directly interacting with Ethereum, like let's say you have an Ethereum node and you are producing some kind of transaction through it, or you're connected to MetaMask in a decentralized way, there is going to be an impact during this timeline. I think they should have been a little more transparent on what that would look like. I think there's also an entire unknown that's going that we're dealing with on this merge, because none of the test nets were close to the representative example of the platform. We've seen next to no testing produced, at least from like OpenSea, Rarible. I haven't seen anything from Uniswap saying that they've tested stuff. Maybe they have, and I just haven't been. It's hard to get to, or it's not just made available that they're good to go. But a lot of these common services is going to be essentially a few-day event, I believe, until people say, okay, the dust settles. I think everything's working. So yes, is there going to be a downtime on this? I think there's going to be operational impact right at the merge, just because that's the reality of such a ceremonial event and exchange of this, that it's just not going to keep clicking. There's going to be some issues, I think, that are going to come up, just because that's what's came up on the test net, and they've been kind of brushed away. But that being said, we'll be watching it and covering it as we go. I wanted to make this one a quick one for you guys. I saw Hawk Mining Company did a $10 super chat like a boss. Question for you. Hudsoner is kicking 16% of the validators offline for ETH in their systems, along with 3,000 Flux nodes. Will that affect, in your opinion, if AWS does it, is it all doomed? That's a good question. Hetzner is, I think, a German cloud provider. I could be wrong on that. I did see that they were saying that they weren't wanting that activity on. So the AWS is a different animal. I'll say first off, the European Union have a lot of different rules that are a little more restrictive when it comes to stuff like that. And I want to say that they're probably just trying not to have a complex tax and data call issue. If things, especially with like the Tornado Cash stuff, gets a little further from OFAC and some clarity, and then people have to start censoring those and whitelisting, transactions out of Tornado Cash. I think they're just not wanting to take into that business. I think there's been a lot of activity related to like Coinbase, like if they have to get into a lot of reporting or seizing specific coins and all that kind of stuff, that Coinbase pretty much said that they're going to stop their staking services. I think indirectly what ends up happening is, as the regulatory pressure pushes, there is definitely more leverage to impact Ethereum's ability to operate in a decentralized manner initially, because a lot of the infrastructure got pushed to a lot of these larger cloud providers. So what they've indirectly done, by, I would say, no fault to the developers from Ethereum, it is what it is. They built this thing. It has these sets of rules, and when you look at that rule set and how to deploy it, and the risk of having 32 ETH deployed to a node, and you're like, do I want this thing running at my house? Has an endpoint, has an IP that assigns my geographic area. No, I think I'll put that on a cloud provider and push that risk to the cloud provider to have its uptime and all that other stuff. You're getting a managed service, and you can do that for a lot cheaper cost, a lot less headache. The immeasurable piece on this is the fact that yes, people can mine, people can create their own node and run their 32 ETH locally. The realities is the overhead, uptime, troubleshooting. You're on vacation and it goes down, or is your downtime going to cause you to be slashed? People look at that and they just make a realistic, and I think a natural approach of saying, well, I'm going to host this somewhere else. The issue is even if there was fine print in Hetzner is that question that said that you can't do these particular financial type of things, if you would have read through that, you would have looked at it and said, well, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just hosting an Ethereum node, and circumstantially I get paid in an emission, but I'm not like, you're not the MSB. You're not doing kind of money services business stuff. You are earning a reward for work that is performed. And in a node's a validator standpoint, it's the same thing, to where that validator is just doing a more simplified process for the validation side by comparison to something like a proof of work algorithm like Ethash. And its decision point is the fact that you have 32 ETH locked up in there, that you have stake, and because of that stake, it gives you the right to do this function. Again, that's work being performed and paid. If people read the fine print there, it was probably not a problem. But then people coalesced the fact that there is transactions in there, and there's emissions and fees that are going to be made there. And then with this whole Tornado Cash thing, the question is if you've received fees or you've validated transactions that met this OFAC list, are you now implicated in being a transmitter of that? And from these cloud providers, I'm going to tell you, they're going to take the least line of resistance on this, because from a risk standpoint, why would they want to have all this extra overhead to say, well, because our services are used for this fashion, we're going to also now have to hire a compliance department that looks at all these people's nodes, and are they going to need some kind of access or some other kind of KYC or KYT, which is know your transaction infrastructure, to see, is that block producer that was awarded that opportunity to produce the consensus for that next block. Let's say a validator was setting on Hetzner's setup. It was the block producer for that particular block number. Type in whatever block number that they're doing. And in that, did it process transactions that had to do with something that's on the OFAC list? So that's the concern. They're probably just looking at a very surface standpoint and going, yep, that's all I needed to hear. I'm out. AWS, I think, will take a little different approach to that. However, it depends on how hard that regulatory comes down on it. And if they distinguish the fact that a validator is different than proof of work because it's deterministic versus non-deterministic, I think that's going to be the inflection point there. That's going to be the the shelling point that's going to be landed on is deterministic versus non-deterministic. Because non-deterministic, you could make the argument like, dude, it's totally random. We are randomly chosen. Nobody knows the proof of work. We're all taking an effort to find that number on the number line. Nobody knows. And you can defend that because it's not like you're just, I think it's a lot more defensible position. If you are selected, then the selection means that, well, because you're selected and it's upcoming, now you can build all this stuff in front of it, which is whitelisting, or, as you're going through the memory pool, you're going to select this stuff out. I think it's a little harder point on the, and it's going to sound like they're the same thing, but I think there is a difference between the deterministic and non-deterministic piece. I think that's the key, that they could come back on. So I don't know. I think at the end of the day, the regulators have a job. They're going to try to execute right, wrong, or indifferent. And I think it's the population's responsibility to come back and say, hey, are we fully in track in how this stuff's working and how this isn't like it's overreach? And then determine, how does it get fixed moving forward? Because malicious people are going to use any service that benefits their activity, right? Cash is probably the number one used instrument for bad things, as an example, right? So because of the traceability issues, right? So I think that's its own little sidebar thing. But does Amazon and all these other providers cause an issue for Ethereum? I think it's one of those things that they got to look at. And I don't. Is there anything they could back off on or change or anything for that? I don't think so. I think we're seeing that right now play live out of like how best to approach it. But they also have to be cognizant of like if they go super private with everything, they're going to be in the same boat that Dash and by and large, all privacy coins are in, where it's just going to be hard to have those integrated in the public infrastructure from a liquidity standpoint, from exchanges, because they're going to have to be compliant. So yeah, it's a big catch-22. So that's all mechanical stuff that's happening post-merge, assuming everything works. So we'll see. We're going to be covering more of this week. Sorry, we're at the end of the week. Into next week, I'm going to be covering a alternative stuff. So a lot of people have been asking, what are we going to do? What are we looking at? And we're going to be covering deep dives on Ergo. I'm going to do a 3-part series on the Ergo with GetBlock.io. We've been talking to them about their Ergo pool, and I've been very interested in like the smart contract side on the Ergo side. We're obviously going to cover Ravencoin and some of the advancements that are going there. We have the Ravencoin cruise in November. We're going to go out there with Tron Black and a whole bunch of the other Ravencoin people. And we're going to go in and do a deep dive on Flux. So you got 3 of the core kind of participants on that. And then, of course, ETC's going to have some coverage of what's going on. I'll see if we can get Bob Silwell on here and have a discussion of what's going on in ETC's world. I want to make sure that we have good coverage of the different networks that we're looking at and what everybody else is looking at. And then what do you do moving forward? If all the liquidity is pulled out, Mt. Gox decides to sell all their coins, and we start looking at $8,000 Bitcoin price and $800 post-merge Ethereum price with, Ethereum having all kinds of issues on a merge. I look at what's the worst case scenario. So I want to go through kind of a matrix with you guys on the next video on building essentially a kind of a SWOT analysis, as it were, on the different networks. What's the risk? What's the worst things that can happen on this, to kind of just level the playing field and set expectations? And then what's the best things that could happen? How would that have impact on us? And I think that'd be a good one for everybody to go through. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the content. Hopefully this was a good kind of walkthrough and stepping through the misconceptions and then some just thoughts on the video. We're going to wrap this one up, my dudes. Hawk Mining with another $10. My dude, you can ask a question. I'll go through them. Do you think Ethereum has a reset button if all else fails? If everything, like if something unknown was catastrophic, I know Tim Binko has said this is a one-way thing, but I'm going to tell you right now, as a longtime developer architect, if there's a will, there's a way. So if something catastrophic happens, I'm going to tell it for them. I don't know what their backup plans are, but I'm going to tell you right now, push comes to shove and something critical happens, it's not going to be about saving face. It's going to be about keeping the $200 billion network running, right? So I have good confidence that they'll make a good decision if things don't look right and it messes up, that they could hard fork it back and just, like an Etch-a-Sketch, run these nodes, restart, and we have almost kind of like a DAO 2.0 kind of situation to where then just proof of work continues, right? Why they don't have anything mechanically to make it seamless, they can always hard fork, right? So they could make a communication like Solana does to everybody. Hey, run this node. We're going to refire it back up, reset TDD, and it's just, you kick a can down the road. That's a worst case scenario. I don't think that's even in the probability of that's probably less than 1%. But if something catastrophic happens that they weren't anticipating and they can't get the thing to finalize for whatever reason, let's say somebody's been holding a 0 day and then they attack it at that moment in time, then their worst case scenario is to hard fork it back and then just push the date. So we'll see. Everything's always recoverable as long as you have consensus, right? So I have no doubt they can fix it if it crashes hard. I don't know if they can fix the POS side. I know that they can fix the proof of work side. So, Serpent saying, as I clock this up, mentioned September 10th for us. So, yes, September 10th, we're going to have a big round table with a whole bunch of miners just talking things, talking merge. We'll make sure that that's out there and pending. So about 8 days away for that, my dudes. I'm confident. Paul D, as a closer here, I'm confident in ETH's dev's ability to rewrite history. I'm leaving that one out there. That's why we're going to please, leave it, my dudes. And I will catch you guys on the next one.